Hello everyone. In this session, we want to take a look at some of the properties of the DNS zone and also some properties of the DNS server itself. We're going to start with looking at dynamic updates for the zone. So we want to click on Tools, DNS. And let's just open up this DNS Manager window. Then we want to expand DC. We want to expand the forward lookup zone. We want to double click on our zone contorso. Then we're going to right click on contorso and select properties. The property that we want to look at here is dynamic updates, and you can see dynamic updates here. Now, the domain name system client computers can use dynamic update to register and dynamically update resource records with a DNS server whenever a change occurs. And this dynamic registering reduces the need for the administrator to manually add records to the zone. You saw in previous sessions how we could right click on the zone and we can add a record, a PTR record, different records. We wouldn't want this. We wouldn't want the administrator to have to add each record to the zone. So dynamic updates here can either be secure or non-secure. And let us click the arrow here, down arrow, and we see that we have non-secure and we have secure updates. Now, DNS update security is available, remember, only for zones that are integrated into Active Directory. So you might want to check and see if you have that tick by Active Directory integrated zone when you are creating the zone, because you can only have secure updates if your zone is Active Directory integrated. So we're going to click on secure only here, and that is how we configure dynamic updates to be secure only. Remember that secure only would be for a zone that is Active Directory integrated. We also want to look at another setting here called aging. Really, it's called aging and scavenging. And we're going to take a look and see what that means. We're going to click here on aging. This feature provides a mechanism for performing cleanup and removal of stale resource records, which can accumulate in zone data over time. With dynamic update, when a computer starts up on the network, that computer's resource record is automatically added to the zone. But let's say that that same computer is improperly disconnected from the network. Then what might happen is that its host record might not have been deleted. If this sort of thing happens frequently, you can have what we call a buildup of stale resource records, which in turn can take up server space, causing unnecessary long zone transfers and degradation of performance. We have to enable the scavenge stale resource records. The first thing we have to do, And one thing that you should bear in mind, that this scavenging has to be enabled both on the zone and on the DNS server itself. So if this is going to work, it has to be enabled both places. We see that we have two settings here. One is the no refresh interval, and the other is the refresh interval. The first one, the no refresh interval, starts from the time that record is refreshed. When the record is refreshed, which would be the refresh interval at the bottom, that's 7 days. You have 7 days. There's actually a timestamp in which you can refresh that record, or in which that record can be refreshed. The no refresh interval means that there's no refresh within those 7 days. After the 7 days have gone by, then that record can be refreshed again. So the first one is the time between the most recent refresh of the record timestamp and the moment that it may be refreshed again. And the refresh interval is the time between the earliest moment when a record timestamp can be refreshed and the earliest moment when the record can be scavenged. So remember the difference between the two. No refresh means that you are during the refresh period, so there can be no refresh. After those 7 days, or whatever you configure the refresh period to be, then the record can be refreshed. Let us click on OK. We also want to look at another setting here, and we're going to close the box by clicking OK. And we want to go to the properties of the server itself. So we're going to right click on the server, and this is what we were talking about here when we said that we can also set aging and scavenging on the DNS server itself. And remember, you have to do both. Set on the zone and also set for the DNS server. And we have the same properties that we had on the zone. Let's cancel that box. We're going to go back to the DNS server and go to the properties, because we want to take a look at the advanced tab of the DNS server, and there's some properties that we want to talk about. The first property that we want to look here is on the advanced tab, and it's called disable recursion. And when you disable recursion, you also disable a forwarder. Now, recursion occurs when a DNS server cannot resolve a DNS query by a client, and that DNS server uses other DNS servers to help resolve it. Now, this can involve the root servers at the root of the internet naming tree, like .net, .com, and so on, thus giving each DNS server the ability to find any name on the internet. So recursion is when a DNS server resolves a name on behalf of a client and then returns the result to that client. If we want, we can disable recursion, but remember, when you disable recursion, you disable forwarders. So therefore, now you have to use the root hints to help you find the resource record on the internet. The next one we want to look at is fail on load if bad zone data. That's the second one, and notice that that one is not ticked off by default either, just as the first one it's not. And this really only applies to a standard type zone, not an Active Directory integrated zone. And it just means what it says. If you have bad zone data, the zone transfer is going to fail. Let's take a look at secure cache against pollution. What does that one mean? That option allows us to prevent possible inaccurate entries, probably such as getting a referral from a server outside of the domain that we queried. And if that happened, we could have some name resolution problems. But most people just clear the cache if they have that type of problem until the DNS problem is resolved. The next one that we can look at here is enable round robin. Round robin DNS is nothing but a simple technique of load balancing various internet services such as web server. How does it work? You configure the DNS server to send a list of IP addresses of several servers with the same host name. An example would be CNN. You have several CNN servers. All of them have the same name, CNN, the same host name. What round robin allows is the load distribution. So if you are trying to access CNN and a million other people are trying to access CNN, you can't have everyone hitting on the same server. So you have various servers, and round robin distributes that load. So you might have a set of people going to the first server, and then another set of people being sent to the second server, and round robin goes in a circle. You go from the first server, then to the second, then to the third, then to the fourth, and then you come back to the first one in a circle. So clients would receive service from different servers in order of the address for that server. So if you have a site and your site gets a large number of hits, round robin would be a good technique to use. And what about enabling netmask ordering? If netmask ordering is enabled on a DNS server, the DNS server will look at the IP address of the client that is performing the DNS query. And then if you have multiple DNS records on the same host name, same scenario with CNN where you have the same host name and multiple records, the DNS server will respond back with a host name that is in the same network as the client whenever possible. So that is the closest server to that client. Let us scroll down and we see we have secure cache against pollution. We can see here by default that secure cache against pollution is enabled. So the DNS server is secured from cache pollution. And this can occur when DNS query responses contain what we call malicious data. So this option, the secure cache against pollution, prevents an attacker from successfully polluting the cache of a DNS server. So these are some of the properties under the Advanced tab of the DNS server property that we will need to be familiar with for our exam. This is the end of our session. We looked at some zone properties and we looked at some DNS server properties. I want to thank you for listening.